The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Chamish back with a very different guest, and that's Kevin Barret. Now look, a lot of people objected to me having him on the show. Well, in short, they wrote letters and told me not to, and here's his response. I'm not surprised. I'm under attack. I admit that you probably know more about these topics than I do. I would happy to hear your take. So I went looking just for this show. What he says is, he cites the Babylonian Talmud interpreting the Torah, prohibiting the Jewish return to the Holy Land, and insisting that the exile is a divine commandment and must be accepted and obeyed. And look, I went to someone who knows a little more about this. Number one, he told me the Babylonian Talmud was written. It began in the 6th century BC. It was more or less finalized 250 years before the current exile, which resulted in something called the Jerusalem Talmud, which is essentially a correction. But in short, he found me about 100 quotes that say, well, they're strictures, not commandments. Commandments are something very different, I was told. And here's a quote: "Remove strangers from our midst." In other words, to get rid of the damn Arabs, all right? And there are about 100 times more sightings of this in the Babylonian Talmud, which doesn't matter because it was written in Babylon. The whole argument's so damn flimsy. And by the way, there are no divine commandments but 10, and it goes on and on. All right, Kevin, that's my intro. What do you say?
Well, I would say that the position that you're outlining now, and whoever you talk to, your rabbi or whoever, naturally is probably going to take that position. But if you wait a minute, let me finish my sentence. Come on.
All right.
If you talk to a rabbi, just pick a random rabbi, anytime up through the 1930s, guess what? Chances would be 90% plus that rabbi would tell you absolutely right. There can be no return. There is a stricture. There are strictures against return to the Holy Land until God makes it happen and the lion lies down with the lamb. Now, the true Jews today, the Nature Carta, are standing by that. But I think the rest of the Jewish community and far more Christians being duped by this.
They are nut cases, and you're building an argument around the most disreputable of sources.
Well, wait. 90+% of all rabbis in the 1930s were all disreputable?
No, they weren't. And first of all, you're mixing things up. But if you want to talk about a divine commandment, well, if exiling Arabs is that commandment, it's being realized. You've got 1.5 million in Germany alone. Now, are you saying that is a divine commandment?
No, that's a demonic commandment, as was this whole movement to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land against the will of God. That is a demonic, satanic movement, and the people behind that, these Satanists, the Rothschild Satanists and the Freemasons, those people who've created modern Zionism are responsible for this ethnic cleansing of the Arab world around Israel.
We are talking about something very real.
Can I interject? I'm listening.
Go ahead, Daisy.
Okay, I want to tell you that there is a little bit of an element of that. Actually, there's quite a bit of misunderstanding on the part of your guest. He twists what the Talmud is saying, but basically what the Mekubalim, what the really deep people who understood the inside of the Torah, people who understood the Torah actually blamed the Jews of Babylon because when Ezra was supposed to come back, they said the biggest sin that the Jews of Babylon did is when they could have come back to Israel 70 years after the expulsion. They did not come back when they should have come back, and that's why they were punished, because they were supposed to come back to the Holy Land. God wanted them to come, and they refused to come. And when the way he's saying 90% of the rabbis would have said, no, you shouldn't come, he's correct about that. But those rabbis were chastised and were admonished by the rabbis who told them, no, you have to bring, what you have to do is the Jews have to come to Israel. They all have to come up. But they were told by the rabbis who really understood the depth of the Torah. And they said, you have to come back to Israel and you have to study the Zohar. You have to study the inner Torah. And the rabbis refused
Zohar. You're right. That's the demonic.
Zohar. No, Zohar is not demonic.
We can make stuff happen. We don't have to let that.
You don't understand the Zohar at all. It is not magic. What is magic is when people worship Lucifer. The Zohar is on a much higher level than that. You have absolutely no understanding of the Zohar. Obviously, you are not a Jew. You have not had. I mean, you might be circumcised if you're Muslim, but it's not a pure circumcision. The real circumcision consists of two parts, which the Muslims don't get. You are not truly circumcised.
Wait, because I didn't have a rabbi sucking blood from my penis when I was a little baby, there's something wrong with me?
Let's be asked, what you're reading, what you're mentioning is all extreme anti-Semitic
excuse me, being opposed to the mutilation of children is anti-Semitic. I'm against all circumcision. I'm a Muslim, but I think circumcision is an absolute abomination.
Were you circumcised?
Well, actually,
Unfortunately, I was circumcised. I was mutilated in an American hospital by idiot American doctors who were under the malefic influence of satanic.
So why on earth are you a Muslim? If you don't even believe in circumcision, why on earth are you a Muslim? You're phony. You're just a phony.
Muhammad, peace upon him, was not circumcised, and the community made a terrible mistake by adopting circumcision, and they did that at the behest of a bunch of Jewish converts, whom they should never have listened to.
Okay, you know what's a smoothie? You know what's a smoothie? Your brain is full of smoothie. It's all mixed up. You have absolutely no...
I do enjoy smoothies, but I think you're defending all kinds of horrors. You're defending genocide in the Holy Land. You're saying God wants you to commit genocide in the Holy Land. You're saying God wants you to chop off the most sensitive parts of little boys' penises and suck the blood out if you're a rabbi? You're out of your mind.
You have absolutely...
All right, Daisy, give me a second.
Okay, I'll get off. Okay, fine, I'll get off.
No, stick around. All right, Kevin, what are you, by the way, Sunni or Shiite?
Well, I'm following the Maliki Law School, although...
Which is Sunni or Shiite?
That's usually classified as Sunni, but I don't think that distinction is particularly important, and I think these diabolical Freemasonic Zionist lunatics are behind the demonic propaganda that is splitting Sunnis from Shiites, as they're behind all of these horrific kinds of provocations that are leading to Armageddon in the Middle East.
Well, we're certainly heading there, but if you don't wake up, you'll be part of it. How do you feel about your Shiite, well, that's exilers, putting it mildly? It's a couple million. How do you feel about them bombing the hell out of Arabs, apparently innocent Arabs, and sending them into exile? How do you feel about Germany taking in 1.5 million and causing tremendous disruption in their own society? How do you feel about these Shiites?
Shiites? Well, I have no problem with Shiites. My problem is with the people who blew up the Twin Towers on 9/11. That is Larry Silverstein, who owned the towers, Frank Lowy, and the other Zionists. Silverstein is a close friend of Netanyahu, and you know as well as I do that they blew up the Twin Towers, murdered 3,000 Americans in order to launch an American war against the enemy Israel. And that's what is destroying the Middle East.
I know.
And those same people blew up mosques and markets in Iraq in order to start the current round of warfare between Sunnis and Shias. Those people are the demonic, Freemasonic, Zionist thugs behind all of these problems.
And I know you're changing the subject. How do you feel about Shias bombing the hell out of Syria and Iraq? Not to mention, by the way, what good does it do them to blow up Pakistanis and Indonesians worldwide? You're saying they're not Arabs.
What are you talking about? You're saying that Shias are out somehow bombing Pakistanis and Indonesians? What are you talking about?
Certainly, they're just putting bombs in universities, in city squares. They're bombing the hell out of innocent people.
Who is doing this and where?
Oh my goodness. What, are you totally blind?
Barry, I'm going to sleep. I don't need to listen to this maniac. Okay,
I know.
Good night. Good night.
No, Barry, maybe you can explain to me what you're talking. You said Shia Muslims are bombing universities in Pakistan and Indonesia?
One university killed 20 students. Indonesia, just a plain ordinary town square. Yeah, I'm saying it. What, you're not...
You're blaming the Shia for this? I thought this was ISIS, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, that was doing this.
Wrong.
Well, why does Netanyahu visit the ISIS terrorists in hospitals in Israel? Why is Israel treating the ISIS terrorists? It's because ISIS stands for Israeli Secret Intelligence Service.
Of course it doesn't. Now let's go backwards once again and try and do our best somehow to understand that there is somebody exploiting Arab hate, and you better understand why. And if you don't, you're going to be one of the exploiters, and the hatred will go on. Now let's go back to the divine commandment. Daisy, in her own way, very, very emotional way, got really ticked off, but it doesn't change the fact they're quoting a Talmud that isn't used, that was corrected, and you're finding divine commandments.
Corrected by the Rothschilds' money. That's what.
The Rothschilds were not around in 0 A.D. All right. Now again.
No, the 90+% of the rabbis who agreed that there should be no return until God makes it happen, up until World War II. That movement, the Zionist movement, was bought and paid for by Rothschild money, as you know. That's the Rothschilds are the founding family of Israel.
The big difference between us is I'm willing to take responsibility when I see crimes of my people. You're apparently not prepared to make the same sacrifice.
Are you kidding? I have called for the overthrow of the criminals running Saudi Arabia. I have no use for ISIS whatsoever. I am perfectly willing to deplore the crimes of Muslims, and I do all the time.
I think we should start from that point. All right? Instead of attacking Jews, and by the way, you really, really don't get Judaism at all.
Well, you know, Barry, it's weird that every time I attack the Saudi royal family, which I pillory every bit as nastily as I pillory the rulers of Israel, nobody seems to care. But if you open your mouth about Israel, whoa, suddenly you're just being abused with rotten fruit by the usual suspects.
What you're claiming is that the Israelis, 250 years before their return to Israel, were commanding them not to return. You have twisted our knowledge to fit into your theory, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's sure not healthy for us. I say there are two victims, but if you don't fess up to what is going on, you've got stuff going on in Germany that is going to lead to tremendous hatred. You don't know about the.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty crazy that greater Israel, that is the land around the current Israel, is being depopulated in order to lay the basis for this biblical greater Israel, which this satanic Zionist movement is trying to create by committing genocide.
Again, you're returning to this crap. Let's face our own problem right now. You've got, just in Germany, I'm not talking about Sweden, and there's a whole bunch in Hungary. It's probably 2 million exiled Muslims by Muslims. And if you keep on saying that it's Jews who are somehow bombing the hell out of Syrian cities, you're not going to fess up.
Oh yeah, this whole problem started when PNAC, Project for a New American Century, organized the new Pearl Harbor, blew up the towers on 9/11, and sent the American military into Iraq, destroyed Iraq, poisoned it with depleted uranium. Iraq is in shambles. So-called ISIS and so on is this backlash of Sunnis in Iraq who are reacting to the destabilization and destruction of their country. They're reacting to the false flag terrorism in which Israelis and Americans both blew up mosques and markets in Iraq and tried to blame the other side, stoking up this civil war between Sunni and Shia. And they're reacting to the Arab Spring, which was funded by people like George Soros and other big money people who essentially whipped up the Syrian people, got them into the streets, and then sent in NATO and or Israeli snipers from rooftops who fired at both the police and the protesters to start the civil war.
So
that's how the civil war started. No, this whole thing was started by the West, led by the Zionists, to destroy the region, depopulate Greater Israel, and finish the genocide.
Who went into Paris and killed 130 people and wounded 300 more, they were Westerners.
Well, of course they were. Witnesses saw that the killers were white, big, muscular, white paramilitaries, just like in San Bernardino. You know, Barry, I got to send you a copy of my new book, Another French False Flag, Bloody Tracks from Paris to San Bernardino. It's a follow-up to the one that you contributed to, We Are Not Charlie Hebdo. Freethinkers Question the French 9/11, and this features 27 leading public intellectuals, including 2 former high-level CIA anti-terror experts, all saying that this was a false flag attack by the West and by the Zionists, not by Muslim terrorists.
By Arabs.
Not by Arabs, no. If Arabs were involved, they were patsies.
All right.
Just like with 9/11, just like 7/7, just like Mumbai, Madrid, London, all of these attacks, they're done by Operation Gladio, which is a joint venture of NATO and Israel. That's what has committed all of these big terrorist atrocities. And you know that, Barry.
No, I don't.
Come on, we talked about 9/11, we've talked about Charlie Hebdo, you know what's going on.
I know what's going on about, let's put it this way, the Arabs who shot up Paris, killing 130.
The white paramilitaries.
What, pardon me?
The white paramilitaries who shot up Paris. Did you read? You probably didn't even see these reports.
I'm going to say it again. The people who are dead and their families couldn't care less about these reports. What you've got is a state where Muslims are really, really being demonized. And if you don't face up to why, we got a problem, because the other side are all over Europe stirring things up. You know about the Cologne New Year's Eve gathering, if you want to call that. You know about that, right?
Well, yeah, but Barry, that's obviously another false flag. I mean, this obviously some gatherings were staged by whom? How hard is it to organize a bunch of adolescents to get together somewhere? And but we have reports, we have eyewitness reports that German police in Cologne stood by as people who appeared to be plainclothes police actually did the groping. And the uniformed police just stood by and let it happen. So there was at least one false flag incident in Cologne.
The Arabs didn't grope anybody. Everyone was
maybe some did somewhere, but we do have the report of this false flag, which indicates that if that's the case, then the whole thing must have been planned. Maybe they got some Arabs there. Maybe they got some Arabs to do some bad stuff too. I don't know. But whoever organized it, it sure as heck wasn't some spontaneous organizing of a bunch of young Arabs. It was the German police that were doing it. So this was clearly yet another of these public relations stunts designed to whip up Islamophobia. And this is what the neoconservatives specialize in, Barry. The neoconservatives have this political philosophy that the only thing that unites people is hatred of a common enemy. And when the Cold War enemy, the communists, disappeared, they set up all of these false flag stunts, all these publicity stunts, 9/11, 7/7, Bali, Madrid, all right up through these 2 attacks in Paris this year. All of that is designed to whip up hatred of Arabs and Muslims. And the prime beneficiary, of course, has been Israel.
About much of what you say, but it's not the whole picture. And you're making it the whole picture. And that's
Tell me about some other parts of the picture.
Well, I'll tell you about let's start with what my rabbinic friend said, go and read for yourself the Babylon Talmud if you want to be bored to death. They don't command, they give suggestions and strictures. Number one, and he found, this is his quote, that he found in a matter of seconds 10 times more strictures that read, and here is what it reads, remove strangers from our midst, then anything about exiles is wrong. It becomes a matter of interpretation, and your interpretation ain't so hot. It's one-sided.
So you think ethnic cleansing is a good interpretation? Remove strangers from our midst? That means we should find people who aren't part of our tribe and, like, kick them out? That's
I
evil.
don't know what it means, but you're not going to like that either, but it's still written 250 years before the current exile, which makes your entire thesis irrelevant. Look, the fact of the matter is, you want to read a Talmud, and you want to understand the Talmud. It is not the Torah. These are not commandments.
Mm-hmm.
These are interpretations.
Gotcha. That's a good point, Barry.
It's not a good point. It's a central point.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've actually made that point. Believe it or not, Barry, I've gotten on the radio with some people that you'd probably call anti-Semites, people who really hate the Talmud. You know, they're Christians who say the Talmud says that, you know, Jesus is boiling in excrement and his mother was a this and that and this kind of stuff.
The Talmud was written 200 years before Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so anyway, these people have claimed that the Talmud says all this bad stuff.
Oh, gosh almighty. You're quoting the Babylonian Talmud that never heard of Jesus. He wasn't around for 2 more centuries.
Right, but couldn't these scurrilous passages have crept in at some later date? Because I was wait a minute, Barry. I just read some citations of medieval historical documents which do refer to these passages of the Talmud. There were actually trials, and there was a trial in France.
It was the Jerusalem Talmud of anything, not the Babylonian Talmud, and that's what you seem to want to quote. Listen.
Okay, Talmud. I'll grant you a different Talmud then. But what I'm saying is, I was arguing with these anti-Jewish types who were saying there's all this horrible stuff in the Talmud, and my point was that this isn't scripture. This is just a bunch of rabbis arguing with each other, and some of them are completely insane, and others are very wise, and that's what the Talmud is.
That's about what a Talmud is. They sat down at night with their candlelights, and they discussed holy works, and the good stuff got written down, but it's not the Torah, which is a history as told by the people who lived it. You've got it all mixed up. But the real problem is, boy, if you really, really are pro-Islamic, you're walking into such a trap. And I just watch it happening. I don't care anymore. I just lay back and watch. But my goodness gracious, what's going to happen in Europe? They're not going to assimilate. They don't belong there in the first place. But the Europeans, especially this Merkel, are letting them in. That is what you call creating the next world war, if you take it far enough, and it seems to be taken far enough.
Well, you know, I don't know, Barry. I've looked at both, different perspectives on this whole immigrant in Europe issue, and it does look to me like, Emmanuel Todd, who's one of the number one French sociology intellectuals, wrote a book, Qui est Charlie? Who's Charlie? About the Charlie Hebdo affair. And of course, he didn't go with us and say it was a false flag, but he made some really interesting points in that book, which include that basically what he's saying is that the right-wing people in Europe who claim that the so-called Muslim immigrants, some of whom are religious, others who
so-called, they're not immigrants?
Well, no, so-called Muslim immigrants. But some of these people, of course, are not necessarily religious. I mean, that's like saying that an American who goes and lives in Indonesia is a Christian immigrant. Well, maybe he is, maybe he isn't.
Hold on, we have to take a break. All right, folks, we're reinterpreting. Oh, gosh. Modern everyday history now, and we'll come back in 3 minutes. We'll plug each other, and anyone who objected to me having Kevin can't feel that I'm not standing up for sanity here as well. See you in 3.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will.
Alright, folks, you've got yourself an emotional Barret Chamish tonight. We have a guest that we're trying to drag slowly into rationality. And look, he's only one person, but my goodness, it's just such a position he's taking. Essentially, if you're a Jew, you're a goner with his position. Look, first of all my books are at lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. There's a search box right in my last name, Chamish, Chamish. Thanks to David Samarin, I have a website still up called www.barrychamish.com. Kevin, plug yourself.
All right, Barry. Well, yeah, I've got some books out too, and people can find a lot of my stuff by way of the website truthjihad.com. And the new book is Another French False Flag, Bloody Tracks from Paris to San Bernardino. You know, both in Paris and San Bernardino, Barry, we had two interesting coincidences with both. One was that in both cases, witnesses said that the actual shooters were large, white, very professional-looking paramilitaries, 3 of them in San Bernardino. So I don't know how they mistook 3 big, strong, white paramilitaries for a Muslim couple with a 90-pound girl. And then the other coincidence, Barry, was that in Paris, we had a drill that mocked exactly what happened. On that day in Paris, on Friday the 13th of November, They were practicing for a multiple site active shooting exercise, and basically it looks like that exercise went live, and that's the event that we read about. Likewise, in San Bernardino, this shooting happened at what must be the only facility for disabled people in the world that has an active shooter drill every single month. And, of course, San Bernardino's police are the most notoriously corrupt in California, if not in America. So it's pretty obvious what happened in both of those places.
Not to everyone. How do you get the books?
Well, you could find another French false flag by just looking for that search term on Amazon. It's available on Amazon. And We Are Not Charlie Hebdo, same thing. Or you could just take that name of the book, and another French false flag, and then put that in there, .blogspot.com. And that'll take you to a book website.
All right, let's go to real reality and not San Bernardino's corrupt cops. We have got, throughout Germany anyways, this is a major scandal. You've got all of these refugees, half safe from Syria, but also from Iraq. You've actually got them coming in from Libya. It doesn't matter. They are Muslims, and they're using public pools as toilets. The people are not.
Wait, Barry, come on. These are old wives' tales. These are urban legends. Many of these things have been debunked.
They're in the
I mean, I don't know if this one has, but I've seen like dozens of these things. Like they claimed that they kidnapped and raped a 6-year-old girl. Turned out it was totally untrue, but everybody believes it because it went viral on social media. And there were like 5 or 6 other stories like this I saw. So now they're using
very mainstream pictures. Very mainstream with pictures. Don't deny everything. You can't deny everything. It's not good for credibility. Now, look.
Well, I haven't seen that story, so I don't know whether to deny it. All I'm saying is there have been these kind of stories that turned out to be false. Somebody's planning propaganda here, Barry.
Yeah, in a very, very public way. It doesn't matter. The end result is the same. You've got a whole lot. And I know Germans like you don't know Germans. When they get really ticked off and they want to recover honor to their land, they can be very nasty hosts.
But Barry, wait a minute. You're saying it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Well, wait a minute. In the 1930s...
I didn't say that. When on earth did I say that?
Because we know in the 1930s there was this horrible anti-Jewish propaganda in Germany, and the vast majority of that wasn't true, saying that Jews were sexual predators. That was the hook-nosed Jew in the poster lusting after the blonde little Aryan girl. That's all that we saw, from the Goebbels and those people in the 30s. And now we're seeing the same thing again. But guess who's behind it? It's Jewish Zionists who are behind it. They're funding it, and they're paying for it, and they're creating false flags, and they're whipping the German people into this anti-Muslim area because they're at war against the world's Muslims, because they want to satanically occupy and commit genocide in Holy Land that's been administered peacefully by Muslims ever since Islam exists.
And you're saying the Jews are coming out good in this. This is what they want. It helps their cause. Let's go back to reality, please.
Have you seen the film Aladdin, Barry? The Disney film Aladdin?
It's about I think you rub a lamp and out.
Yeah, exactly, that one. Yeah. So did you know that's the first Disney film that Michael Eisner, the Zionist, made when he took over Disney Studios? And you know who he based the villain on? The hook-nosed evil villain, the Vizier. He based that on the Jewish hook-nosed peddler in Walt Disney's anti-Semitic cartoon, The Three Little Pigs. He took the anti-Jewish stereotype from Disney's Three Little Pigs, and he took exactly the same picture, changed it a little bit into a vizier, and he used that to whip up hatred against Arabs and Muslims.
Why is this relevant?
Because that's exactly what the Zionists are doing, whipping up hatred against Muslims using the Nazi techniques that were perfected against the Jews in the 1930s. Today, the Zionists are the new Nazis, and they are creating not only genocide in Palestine, but they're trying to create another genocide in Germany.
Now, once again, people listen to the first hour. We're a very different point of view. Look, you're just going head to head, and it's going to result in disaster. Now, look, I want you to tell our listeners how it is that a religion, call it that, there's all kinds of things, but it convinces people to die for it. Forget dying, to kill for it. Somebody is exploiting the hate. Now, do your best, without saying Israel Zionist, try and explain, are the Arabs in any way responsible for the hate? Could it be there's something with their own culture that should be, for once, without saying the Saudi royal family, you're talking about something dividing the Muslim culture. And it's about
the Arab or the Muslim culture, they're not the same thing. The majority of Arabs here in the United States are from Christian backgrounds, not Muslim backgrounds, Barry.
What's that got to do with it?
Well, you just use the two terms as if they were interchangeable.
Why United States? Who cares? I'm saying once again, you've got a civil war that's driven out at least a couple million people into Europe, which is really not reacting well, finally. Try to analyze what's going on. How did you convince half of Islam, all right, Muslims, Arabs, whatever you want to call them, to kill the other half? You have to have someone exploiting the hate and stirring it up. And why? Now, without saying Jews, Muslims, Freemasons, Jews, Muslims, what is going on and why are the Arabs falling for it?
Well, some of them, Barry, are not particularly religious. The so-called ISIS, they're actually, in Iraq at least, made up mainly of atheist Ba'ath Party people. These are Saddam Hussein's military people.
So we won't say religious Muslims. We'll say Arabs. It doesn't matter. You're still avoiding the question. How does this religion, this political movement, call it whatever you want, get people to die for it?
Well, it's very similar to what happened in Southeast Asia. The United States bombed the hell out of Laos and Cambodia, and then you got Pol Pot committing more horrors in a totally devastated land. And it was the neocons with their false flag on 9/11 that got the U.S. to destroy Iraq. And the destruction of Iraq set off these shockwaves, and that's basically responsible for what we're seeing today.
Why are you avoiding the basic question of 9/11?
I mean, it's like blaming the people of the region today that would be like blaming the people of Southeast Asia for the horrors that were inflicted by the United States genocide in Vietnam. And today we're seeing a United States and Western NATO genocide in the Middle East done, I think, primarily to benefit Israel, but not just that. I mean, there are a number of factors involved, and it's this genocidal attack on the Middle East coming out of the United States and NATO that is responsible for all of this bloodshed. Just like it was responsible.
Are Arabs total morons? They can't see when they're being manipulated. They can't
just
see
like
that
the people in
they're
Laos.
killing their own
People in Laos under Pol Pot were total morons.
Oh, enough with Laos and Pol Pot. You're talking about Arabs taking bombs and blowing up whole cities.
How about the people in Indonesia, Barry, in 1965, the year of living dangerously, when the CIA trained Indonesians and ordered Indonesians to torture to death about 1 million, some would say up to 2 million.
Avoiding the
Indonesians that stupid? Well, yes, of course they were. And the Laotians were that stupid. The Arabs, anybody is that stupid. If you go and utterly destroy a place, murder people, in Iraq, they've poisoned the whole country with depleted uranium. Kids are being born with multiple limbs, birth defects everywhere. The whole land is just dead, bombed to oblivion. And then Syria is attacked with a psychological war. They've destroyed Syria. There's no civil war there, Barry. This is a war on Syria by the United States and Israel and its regional partners. This is the destruction. This is the murder of Syria by the United States and its Israel and their puppet states.
We are never going to be able to have a rational discussion. You're not being rational. You have avoided the question. How do you get one people to actually, you're not just talking minor genocide. We are in the hundreds of thousands, causing a couple million refugees so far. Face it. How do you get people to do it?
You attack and destroy their countries. That's what we did to Libya. We bombed the hell out of Libya, destroyed their infrastructure, overturned their government, turned it into a wasteland ruled by warlords. And of course the people are fleeing Libya. Duh. We poisoned Iraq, destroyed Iraq. And of course the people are leaving Iraq. Duh. We destroyed Syria by stoking this so-called Arab Spring, which is a complete psychological warfare operation designed to set off mercenaries, our mercenaries that we paid for, destroyed Syria. Of course the people are fleeing Syria. We destroyed these places.
I'm returning to the same question. are the Arab people so dumb that they're willing, because one is a Shiite, the other is a Sunni, to destroy them, which is what is happening in the Middle East right now. Are they that dumb?
Well, unfortunately, Barry, a lot of people are dumb enough to believe the kind of mainstream propaganda that they get. Here in the United States, an awful lot of people actually believe the garbage they get in their mainstream media. And the same thing is true. Like when I was in Morocco, I was hanging out with a couple of my different brothers-in-law recently, and one of them sees through the propaganda. The other one, however, tends to believe what he sees on Al Jazeera, which is a U.S. propaganda outlet. Of course, Qatar is completely run by the U.S. military. It's just a U.S. military base. All of these Gulf countries are just puppet states. And one of my brothers-in-law doesn't get that because he believes the slick, high production value images on Al Jazeera. So yeah, people are stupid. People believe what their propaganda is to believe. And the money and the power is behind this Western NATO Zionist genocide that's been inflicted on the Middle East, and
now,
yes, an awful lot of people have been suckered into believing it.
Once again, when you say that, you haven't got a clue. Now, as for Zionism, it's very divided, and the country of Israel, you'll be thrilled to know it's so divided, it may not survive the division. And I had a guest who was from not the Zionists, who are stirring up Syria and causing refugees. They are from a very different Zionism. They want to raise families, and they have their ideology, but they are not the labor Zionists. It's a whole different animal out there, and you're not dissecting.
I'm sorry?
You're not dissecting.
I'm not dissecting. Well, I've never dissected a Zionist. I actually didn't want to dissect a frog in high school.
Apparently not. Listen to our of our show and try and understand they're the victims, and unless you understand their children are dying, their children are being tortured, there are all kinds of aspects. All you can see is right and left, and right is naturally your enemy, and you exploit a Talmud that was written 250 years before the exile, come up with wacky quotes when opposite quotes are multiplied in it, and create an argument that doesn't make any rational sense.
Well, I can just dump the Talmud and say that whatever, and the Torah and the Quran, which I think the Quran actually is pretty coherent as Scripture goes. I can take that as Scripture. The other Bibles are great stories, but I wouldn't take them totally as Scripture because there's just so much nonsense in them. For instance, in the Torah, there's the commandment to commit genocide against the Philistines, which seems to be being carried out now in Palestine.
There's no commandment like that. There are 10 commandments. Only 10.
Okay, they're not commandments, but it certainly seems to encourage the mass murder of the Philistines.
And for what reason? And once again, and why are you including this? The whole problem is you're looking for what, quotes, seems to support you, and unless you look at the other quotes. And by the way, the Quran is full of opposites. You have one thing is good, and then you have the opposite. Have you ever read the 91 Hadithin?
The 91 Hadithin?
Hadiths, if you want.
Well, that's not the Quran. The Hadith are sort of equivalent to the Talmud.
I had a guest explain this, but it's the same thing. You can take whatever you want and read it the way you want. You're reading it a specific way, and it's really, really
and that's why I'm saying that we should kind of, set the Scripture aside just for the moment and just look at what's really going on and say, well, was it the Palestinians who went across the ocean to try to carve out a country of themselves, a Palestinian state?
Was there
Brooklyn?
a Palestinian?
Or was it the
ever looked
the other
at
side
the
that crossed
background
the
where
ocean
they came
to
from?
attack
Have you ever looked at the background of where Palestinians were born? Listen, unless you stop this nonsense, we will never get anywhere. Again, I'm going to say to you over and over, in the search for truth, I know plenty of stuff about 9/11. I just don't want to help you. All right? You'll use it wrongly. You'll use it wrongly because you ignore your own crimes. Unless...
What crime did I commit lately?
You want to go through it? How about bombing the hell out of northern Syria, causing 1 million refugees. That's an Islamic crime, and you have to face it.
Wait, you're saying Putin's bombing Syria is an Islamic crime? Or who's bombing Syria? Who are you talking about?
Is not who bombed the cities of northern Syria. If you must name them, it's Assad, but I'm not going to sort that mess out. The fact is you're not facing up. You're not facing up.
Wait. Syria, look, if any sovereign government is attacked in the way that Syria's sovereign government was attacked by foreign sources that stirred up the attempted regime change, any government in the world would be at least as brutal as Assad's government is. You're in the United States, Barry. Do you remember Waco? That was just some people who wanted to sort of have their own little religious thing going. And look, they were all burned to death, including the children. That's how sovereign governments react to attacks on their sovereignty.
To irrelevancy.
So who are you going to blame for Syria, Barry? You should blame the aggressors. As Nuremberg said, the only real war crime is aggression. All the others, even genocide, is subservient to the original aggression that created all of the violence and misery. And who committed the aggression in Syria? There was a total paper trail showing that there was a regime change plan for Syria going back actually into Israel in the 1980s, but right up through the 2000s, the Bush administration, and on into the Obama administration. NATO was planning to overthrow the government of Syria. So this was another war of aggression, just like Iraq, just like Libya.
Once again.
And just like the invasion of Palestine by the Zionists. These are all wars of aggression against the people.
Once again, I say the invasion came from Iraq and wherever the British could lure feral Arabs to get a job. That's a good chunk of
the British were invaders too. That's true.
You're not looking.
British had no right to
Everyone's an invader, but the Muslims are good. They're good, decent people bombing the hell out of themselves, but they're good and they're decent unless somehow you can get a piece of reality. What you're talking about is you are promoting another Holocaust, and that's why Jews don't like you.
Well, I get along fine with a lot of Jewish folks. And there's a great new article by Alan Hart. Have you seen Alan's new piece?
I don't know who Alan Hart is.
Alan Hart is a former BBC lead Mideast correspondent, and he was a back-channel peace negotiator, a personal friend of Golda Meir and Yasser Arafat. Alan's new piece points out that young Jews in the United States are turning against Zionism, and it's about time.
And it's about time you looked at another perspective besides this. You're looking for whatever supports you. And I'm going to say it again. What I find out I don't like, I truly don't like, but I kind of try and step back, whether I like it or not, and report it honestly. You're not doing that. You're not doing journalism. All right?
So what am I supposed to report honestly?
All right.
I'm supposed to
got a situation.
People who've been invaded, attacked, occupied, and genocided.
You have got a situation that really should be stopped, and that is I would call it civil war. That's what I would call what's going on in the Middle East. And yes, you're right. The media. I saw a movie. It was so bad. It was called 13 Hours. It was about the war in Libya, where the Arabs really are not portrayed well, but that's not the point. Why was the ambassador Stevens in Benghazi in the first place? Why was the White House watching?
Al-Qaeda.
Probably. You know what? I'm not disagreeing. The point is, I recognize bullshit, and you buy into it. And unless you can sort this out, you've got a real problem. Why, by the way, is this killing going on within Islam? Because all is forgiven if you do a jihad killing. And I had a guest last week explaining how it's done. All is forgiven. You don't have to go to hell. It's great. Look.
What are you talking about, Barry? It's all is forgiven?
All right. I'll give you Mr. Warner's number. He was my guest last week.
He's a Muslim? Is he an Islamic scholar?
He's not a Muslim, but he's an expert in his field.
Oh, he's probably another of these fake experts, these Islamophobia industry morons.
Well, you're a fake expert on Jews and Zionists. And that's, if you find a difference, great. The fact is, Zionism is very complicated, and we are the victims. We lost we lost half of Ashkenazi Zionism. We lost our people, and we're facing it finally, a few of us. You're not facing it. You're just not.
Not facing that who lost, that you lost half your people?
I'm not facing that you're about to see something similar. And unless we can sort this out, the bad guys are going to win. Fair enough.
We just got a message here from a listener or a studio person or something saying that we're supposed to agree that the Vatican is behind a lot of the bad stuff. What do you think about that, Barry?
Who said? First of all, I don't disagree with that, and that's a very long topic, and they're really, really not good for Jews. All right, with that, and I wrote an article. I called it "Poop." The holy poop of Rome, just to get attention, by the way. That'll
get attention.
I know, it worked. And I wrote about, he recognized Palestine and then went to the Jewish ghetto, and the Jews kissed his robe. And I'm writing about a history that's taking place, whether I like it or not. And frankly, I'm very disappointed by my people. I truly am. But you're not showing the same disappointment. And
okay. You want me to show some disappointment with my Muslim people, all almost 1.7
Sure, why not? Don't
billion?
say the Saudi royal family.
Well, no. I can be disappointed with the Muslim people because but the thing is, Barry, I'm in a situation where the world media is heavily controlled by people who are basically bashing Islam and Muslims all the time. So if I say something like most Muslims really are missing an awful lot of Islam, that there's a tragedy that people have gone over to these very superficial kinds of Salafi, Wahhabi kinds of interpretation, that Saudi money has pushed Wahhabi Islam, that people have lost a lot of the deep spirituality of Islam, that there's been a lot of loss of the real faith. Sure, I would agree with all of that. And I would also, but I would say people need to look at Javad Jamil's book. He's a medical doctor who did a very in-depth study, and he published his findings in a book called Muslims Most Civilized But Not Civilized Enough. He found that on almost all of the relevant indicators of well-being, and lack of bad stuff like crime, suicide, drug addiction, stuff like that overall Muslims are doing pretty well. They're doing better than non-Muslims. And if you adjust this for the per capita income and scale of development, Muslims are doing really well. But you know what, Barry? If you compare the practicing Muslims to the non-practicing ones end up losing the edge. That is, they have just as much suicide, drug addiction, crime, and all that bad stuff.
How about getting a suitcase, finding a boat, landing in Hungary and getting to Germany? It's not a matter of whether they're religious or not. They're victims.
That's right. That's absolutely right, Barry. I agree.
It's the end of the show. I got emotional. I shouldn't be getting this emotional, but if we don't find rationality, we're gonna see what victims.
Well, Barry, I appreciate
that's what we're going to see, and it's going to be real soon. We're going to see who the victims are. Folks, this has been Barret Chamish. I hope you'll listen to me next week. Night all. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.